Hello everybody, I'm Nire. Welcome to my channel, and today we're going to be talking about the 9 books I read in the month of July. So first of all, this is my first video. I am so excited to be joining the BookTube community. I've been a reader my entire life. I absolutely love everything about books, and so I thought that it was a good idea for me to start a YouTube channel. I have been uploading book content for about a month now over on TikTok, so if you want to check that out, I will leave the link in the description down below. So I'm going to start by giving you some stats about my reading month and how it went. I already know that the average rating is not going to be amazing because I didn't have the best reading month. However, I did read my favorite book of the year so far this month. So all the stats that I'm going to be talking about come from the Storygraph app because that's what I use to track my reading. So I read a total of 9 books in the month of July, which is amazing. I have not read this amount of books in a month in such a long time. I've been on a reading slump for most of 2025, so I'm really happy with that number. So all of those books were fiction books. I did not read a single nonfiction book this month, which I'm not really a big nonfiction reader, but I do read some here and there. My top genres were romance, thriller, literary fiction, and contemporary. Also, most of the books that I read were ebooks. However, I did read 1 physical book this month. And then finally, my average star rating for this month is 2.78. As I said in the beginning, I did not have the best reading month. I just have not been loving the books that I've been reading lately. All right, so those were my stats for the month. Now let's get into the books that I read and what I thought about them. The very first book that I picked up in July, and my only 5-star, and so far my favorite book of the year, was Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Now, this book, let me tell you about this book. Currently, will not shut up about this book. I absolutely loved it. This was so great. This was actually my most anticipated read of this year, and thankfully, it did not disappoint. I absolutely loved this. I just absolutely adored it. If you have not picked it up, go read it right now, okay? Go read it. Go pick it up. If it's on your TBR and you have not read it, go read it right now because it is that good. So this book mainly takes place during the 80s, and we follow Joan, who's one of the very first women to get into NASA's astronaut program, and we just follow her life. While she's at this program, you know, we see her meeting new people, making relationships with her coworkers, and we also see her falling in love. This is such a heartbreaking book, so if you're going to read it, be aware that you're probably going to cry. I cried so many times while reading this book. Sometimes I was crying because my heart was so filled with love, and I just loved the characters, and I loved what was going on. And then the majority of times I cried because of the sad things that happened in this book. This was just amazing. I don't know if I said it, but it is completely obvious. I ended up giving this book a 5-star rating. Again, if you have not picked it up, go pick it up right now. The next book I read this month was The Favorites by Lane Fargo. This book, it's so popular right now with the book community, and I've heard amazing things about. I know that it's been compared to Daisy Jones and the Six because it does have some interviews in it, but the majority of the book is told in the main character's Katarina's point of view. So in this book, we follow Katarina and Heath, who are ice dancing partners, and we just follow them as they grow in their sport and they try to go into the Olympics. That is a basic premise of this book. I ended up giving this book a 2-star rating because even though I was entertained and I did wanted to continue reading, didn't love Heath's character. I didn't like him. At first I did, and I thought this was going to be one of those books where you just absolutely love the couple and you want nothing else but for the couple to be together. That was just not the case for me. Once the story got going and I saw how the main relationship started to develop, I did not like it, and I really did not like the ending. I just didn't like how some characters ended up. It actually made me angry seeing how some of the characters ended up at the end of the book, and I just did not like it. So like I said, I ended up giving it a 2-star rating. All right, so the next book I read was picked during the first episode of the TBR Takedown series I do over on TikTok, and that is Defy the Night by Bridget Kammer. So I also gave this book a 2-star rating because I felt so bored while reading this book. Even though it did have a very interesting premise, the actual development of the plot wasn't as interesting. So in this book, we follow our main character Tessa, who lives in this kingdom that is infected by this plague-like fever, and the only known cure or treatment for this are these moonflower petals that only grow in like 2 sectors of the entire kingdom. So it is a very scarce resource, and so Tessa goes out at night to steal those moonflower petals and gives them to the less fortunate, similar to Robin Hood, who steals from the rich to give to the poor. And that is basically what happens in the book. That is basically the premise and what you need to know going into that book. However, I just thought that they focus so much on the politics of the world and, you know, how to distribute the moonflowers that they really didn't develop the fantasy plot much or at all. We didn't see any explanation as to why the fever was there or why the moonflower petals work and other things don't. And also the romance was very lackluster for me. I was not invested in them like whatsoever, or any of the characters really. I didn't really care for any of the characters. I do believe that some people might like this. I just feel like it's not for me. It is a YA book, which might be why I don't love it, because I'm not loving YA as much as I used to. However, I still give it a try because I've read some amazing YA books before. So I just feel like this particular book was just not for me. Even though it was not for me, I definitely wouldn't want you to not read it because of my rating. If it sounds good to you, if you find the synopsis interesting, I recommend you pick it up and see what you think about it. All right, so next I read A Woman Is No Man by Etta Fromm. This was yet another pick from my TBR Takedown series over on TikTok, and I ended up giving this book a 4-star rating. I really enjoyed this book. It was very heartbreaking. It was very emotionally impactful, and it was a very heavy book to read because it does deal with some very difficult topics. So in this book, we follow 3 generations of Palestinian women in the same family while they deal with cultural expectations, identity. So I definitely recommend you check trigger warnings if you're planning on picking this book up. As I said, this book is just very heavy and very heartbreaking. I ended up giving this book a 4-star rating, so I do recommend you pick it up, but again, check trigger warnings if you do. And then I read All the Water in the World by Erin Kaffel. So this is a dystopian apocalyptic book about a family who's living in a flooded New York City after the climate crisis became so bad that the glaciers started to melt and massive floods started to happen, and they're currently trying to survive while staying at the American Museum of Natural History while also trying to protect the different exhibits at the museum. So I ended up giving this book a 3-star rating. I did really enjoy my time while reading this. I didn't connect with any of the characters, and also the pacing sometimes wasn't the best. I thought that it did get a little bit slower at some points, and it's not a book that I'm going to be thinking about all the time. It was okay for what it was. And then I read Unsteady by Peyton Corin. This book was also part of my TBR Takedown series, and I ended up giving it a 3-star rating. So in this book, we are following Riz, a hockey player who has become one of my favorite male main characters of all time, and Sadie, an ice skater. So basically, we're following them through college and while they deal with different life situations. So again, I definitely recommend that if you are going to pick this up, you check trigger warnings because it does deal with some heavier topics that might be triggering for some people. The second half of the book was so much stronger than the first half. At the beginning, I was just not connecting with the characters. I absolutely did not like the romance. I just thought that it was very unhealthy, and I thought that one of the characters was a little bit manipulative towards the other main character, and I just didn't think I was going to like this book at the beginning. I thought I was going to give it a 2-star rating. However, during the second half of the book, I started to get more invested in the story, and I saw the characters and their relationship grow, and they became a safe space for each other, and I really enjoyed that part of the book. As I said, I did have a really good time reading it. I do own the second book in the series, and I really want to pick it up because I believe that it is about Sadie's best friend Ro, which I absolutely loved and I want to see more of. So I am going to be picking up the next book, and I'm hoping that I'm going to like it much more than this first book. All right, and the last 2 books that I'm going to be talking about, I'm just going to show you them. However, I'm not going to tell you my ratings or my thoughts because they are going to be part of some future videos, and I don't want you to know my ratings before then. So those books are Flawless by Elsie Silver, The Last One by Will Dean, and The Teacher by Frida McFadden. All right, so those were all the books I read in the month of July. I hope that, unlike me, July was a good reading month for you and you found some new 5-star reads. Please don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more book content from me. I will be uploading videos every Friday. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.